So Power BI, Power Apps and Flow, the last two we're interested in for today, represent what Microsoft are describing here as empowering our power users. So people like site owners and site collection admins, people that don't necessarily have to be true developers, they don't have to be used to working in Visual Studio with code, can actually use these products to create really quite bespoke flows and forms. One of the other cool things underneath this whole idea of this next generation of tools is developers, so people that are used to working with code in Visual Studio and whatever other products, they're able to extend behind the scenes of all these products. So Power BI, Power Apps and Microsoft Flow are what we're interested in today, which is the end user side of things, kind of no code or no code, let's say for now. But when we hit the limits of what we can do in all those things, we could turn to our friendly developer, whether they're a third party that we talk to as a contractor and they do a few days work for us here and there, or whether they're internal and we've got our own development team, we can turn around as power users to our development teams and they can extend the functionality beyond what we get as standard. So that's really good news, because in the old products, when we were in things like SharePoint Designer or InfoPath, what would happen is we'd hit a ceiling of functionality, and unless Microsoft upgraded us to a newer version of the product, bringing one out every 3 years or so, it was very difficult to break through those ceilings. There was functionality and that was it. If something didn't work today, it's probably not going to be available next month or the next month after, regardless of how much time and effort you put in. At that point, you eventually hit these ceilings that you can't go beyond. So when Microsoft developed these new range of tools, one of the main things they were working on was making sure that everything was extensible, so everything could be added to. And there's two different ways that's happening. Microsoft are expanding all these things all the time. So Microsoft actively are listening to feedback on current limitations, and we will hit one or two limitations in the session today. And based on that feedback, Microsoft and their development teams are pushing out updates. Because most of this software, all the bits we're interested in for today at least, is all cloud-based, they can update that every day or every 6 hours if they need to, and when I log in as a power user or as a developer, I see the newest software. Yep. So it's not a sort of scary thing anymore that they're going to have updates. It's a good thing, because the updates can be automatic, and hopefully they're going to give us the functionality that we've been requesting. Okay? So it's definitely a really positive situation without some of the old limits. So for today, we're Power Apps and Microsoft Flow. Yeah, we're not going to worry too much about the Power BI side of things. Okay, so we've identified that we're going to use a whole range of products, and that's part of Office 365 and kind of Microsoft, I guess, particularly, but Office 365 especially. Office 365 gives us more choices than ever before. Yep, so these two new products are just expanding that range of choice that we have. So some bad news, in the most part, we can't automatically migrate things. And that's because of what we just explained. There's not this parity between the products. If Microsoft had spent 3 years making small changes to SharePoint Designer or 3 years making small changes to InfoPath, then we would have just been able to work in the new versions of those products with our old forms and our old workflows, and everything would have been good. But we would have probably just got marginal gains. It wouldn't have been kind of game-changing like these products are going to be. So we're kind of in the situation where nothing or very little is going to automatically migrate. So a couple of examples. I can't grab a 2010 or a 2013 workflow in SharePoint and just convert it into a flow. It won't let me do it. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is the commands that are available, the actual, what we would call workflow actions traditionally, they're not the same. So the actual workflow actions are not the same. So you can't just replace one for the other. Yeah. Similar story with InfoPath. So again, if I've already got an InfoPath form that I've built in SharePoint, perhaps it's SharePoint Online, I can't just tell it to convert that form straight into a Power App. And again, we'll see why in a moment. Well, the good news is we do have loads of ways of quickly building Power Apps. There's loads of methods that we can use, from templates to building them automatically from data sources. There's a whole variety of techniques, but we don't just get to hit a big old upgrade button. And again, that's how things stand at the moment. Who knows, maybe in 6 months' time there might be more choices, but at the moment this is where we stand. And that's one thing I'm going to say a couple of times today, because these products are still very new. One of the products has actually just gone into general availability. It's only just moved out of preview this week. So that's how new these products are. So they've been around, a few months, let's say. They've not been around years yet. And they've been changing all the time. Whilst they've been in preview, we've been seeing them change. So some of these things, they're true today, but in the future we might have even more functionality. So just to summarize, so mostly we can't migrate because Microsoft never designed these to be direct replacements. As part of that, there's no feature parity. And also Microsoft want us to stay on the path. So the stay on the path idea is something that Microsoft used to describe how we should be building our SharePoint sites going forwards. Stay on the path effectively means be safe. So if I'm building something, I want to build something using standard best practices rather than workarounds. Products like InfoPath and Microsoft SharePoint Designer 2013, to push the limits of them, we often end up using workarounds. Yep. So rather than following best practices and normal processes, tick a box and you've got something done, people would end up downloading things off the internet, copying bits of code from random websites. So that's not staying on the path. If you have your heart set on doing something and that's your goal and you want it to work in X, Y, Z way, and you're scouring the internet and using all sorts of workarounds, what happens then is in a few weeks' time when you get an update to your site from Microsoft, that crazy workaround that you had initially stops working today. And one of the ideas with these new products is we shouldn't have to use these same workarounds. There's proper processes so we can stay on the path, and what that should mean for us is we get more functionality that's going to work reliably, and it means for Microsoft it's easier to support. Yeah, we've not got all these people out there doing all these different crazy things. Okay, so that's just a quick summary of those. So if everyone's happy with that idea, what I'm going to do now then is start to take a look at each of these products. I'm just going to run through a couple of slides to begin with, and then as soon as I've gone through this kind of theory for the two products, then I'm going to go into some demos and we'll demo both the products. So the first product that I want to talk about, this is probably the one that I was most excited about of the two when I first saw the initial marketing releases. The first one is Flow. Okay? So as an overview, what does Flow do for us? Well, it's browser-based, so I don't have to download SharePoint Designer to use it. Okay? So it's going to allow me to build workflows, or flows as they're described now. At the moment, when I'm building these flows to automate processes, they can run on a schedule, so we can have them run every minute, which is crazy, or every hour, or every day, or every week. So we can have these automated processes that run on the schedule. We can also, though, hook them into SharePoint, which makes sense to me because I'm a SharePoint person very much. So I can say when a new document's uploaded, run a flow. When a new task is added to a task list, run a flow. So we can do all these things that maybe we expected. Just to look at that from a slightly different point of view, flows can also be triggered by lots of other things. So not just SharePoint activity. So a flow could be triggered based on something that happened on Twitter, or a flow could be triggered based on something that happened on Facebook or Yammer or Microsoft CRM Online or any other number of services. So actually it says here, at the moment, and this number might be incorrect already because this is going up all the time as well, we've got over 45 services that we can connect to, and we can either read information from or we can send data to. So we can trigger workflows not just based on what's happening in SharePoint. So that's quite a big difference to what we used to be able to do in SharePoint Designer. Yeah, SharePoint Designer, we could pretty much hook into when a new item was created, whether it was uploaded or used a content type. We could hook into when someone edited an item, and that was about it. We didn't really have many other choices. It was pretty difficult to schedule something, so it could run every day. Again, there was workarounds for that, but it was never really good best practice that worked reliably. Whereas in the new flow system, we'll be able to schedule as well as triggering things from lots of different events. So already, hopefully you're starting to think this is different. This is not just a little step where they've given us one extra thing. We've got over 45 services that we can connect to send and receive data. So I'll show you the big list in a moment. It's kind of overwhelming. One of the things they've done in this product is they've made it so that whenever you move around, you can always search. So although I'm saying there's 45 of these things to kind of deal with, actually you don't have to see them all. You can just start to type in Twitter or delete or post, and as you do, it quickly filters down the results to the things that you want. So there's a lot of search-driven user interface, which is great. Yeah. So for these big products that are only going to grow over time, it's pretty good. It's really good. A couple of other things then. At the moment, there's one limit to be aware of, but this is not a kind of awful limit, but it's hopefully something that will get better in the future. When you're building one of these new flows, it can currently have 64 steps. Okay, so you can have 64 steps. So you can actually build a massive flow, a massive process with 64 steps. But that's currently what's supported. So hopefully in the future that might be even bigger, but you can do a lot with that already. If it does become an issue, you can start to go down the route of having one flow that initiates another flow. So you can break them down effectively a bit like subroutines. Okay? But you can build a lot within your 64 at the moment. What do these kind of steps or actions include? Well, they include things like loops. So we could say continue to do something over and over again until we've applied it to all of the items in the list, or if we've got an email that comes in and the email contains attachments, we could actually say grab the first attachment, the second attachment, the third attachment, so we've got all the data and then move on. So we can loop through a whole variety of different objects. As well as loops, which can be conditional, we also have things like if statements. So within the design of our flows, it's important that they don't just run top to bottom, they need to be smart. So a combination of loops and if statements, and then a few other bits around that same kind of logic and flow idea will allow us to do that. So one of the first demos we're going to do today will let us see that. A couple of other things that are really important when we're building business processes, or flows as we're calling them now, is user interaction. So we don't just want to have a process that runs behind the scenes automatically, because that's probably not going to be right for how most of us work. Yes, we want something to be fully automated, that's great, but we'd like to also have user interaction. We want to be able to email people. When we email people, we want them to be able to make decisions. So one of the cool things is we can actually email someone with an approval request. The workflow can sit and pause whilst they make their decision, and within the email they receive, it looks very pretty. A lot of the other systems that have approval, they look horrible. So it looks very pretty, very simple, and in the email, you can click once to approve or reject. So again, these are things that if you're trying to build this within other systems, you might have found a way to do it in SharePoint Designer or SharePoint Designer with InfoPath, but again, you were really having to push the limits of those products, and you never ended up, for most of us, with something that looked great or worked 100% of the time. So left us kind of nervous. You know, it works today, but will it work tomorrow? We can move away from a lot of those now with these simple commands that look great, they're easy to use, and then from what we've seen so far, obviously it's a new product, they're going to work reliably as well. Okay, so that is pretty exciting to me. A couple of other things that came up when customers have been phoning us and asking us about this stuff and trying to get a handle on when they can use it. By default, this stuff lives in the cloud. Yeah, so the Flow product lives up there in the cloud alongside Office 365. Yeah, so it's up there. One of the benefits of that is we can use it with mobile apps. So we're going to show you some web pages and apps that we can use on an iPhone, for example, or a Surface. So that's pretty cool. So this cloud-based stuff we can work on when we're out and about, not just in the office. We can also use some extra configuration. So there is a bit of extra setup to do, but if you're willing to do that and you've paid for the right license, which we'll talk about in a moment, you can also use a gateway so that your flows can be triggered, for example, from on-premises. Yeah, so you could have something that's initiated from SharePoint on-premises and then runs in the cloud and perhaps also interacts with online services. So if you're in a hybrid environment where you've got Office 365 and SharePoint on-prem at the moment, there is this idea of a gateway configuration that can allow your new Flow technology to interact with SharePoint on-premises as well. Okay, so that's just a setup thing. So it's definitely available. It's not a workaround. It's just a configuration thing, but you also have to have the right license. So we'll talk about that in a sec. We've already mentioned that it can run on schedule, it can be triggered on-prem or in the cloud, and then last one there, this is something that Microsoft is still working on, so I don't think it's kind kind of finished yet, but the basic idea is there. So if I build a flow, so if I've built something to deal with document approval or dealing with tweets and posts on our social, Facebook and Twitter. So I've built a template, and maybe I think it's really amazing. There's going to be processes in the future that make it easier to then share that with other people. Okay, so there's processes at the moment to share it, with one or two people, but there's going to be processes in the future when Microsoft is developing further. So you could perhaps be a partner and you could sell flows that you've made to your customers. So at the moment we don't have all that quite in place, but that's one of the updates that I think is coming the start of next year. Some improvements around that. I've got a quick example there of how nice that looks in an email. So the approve reject bit that we set up there, that would literally be part of an email. I could hit approve and reject and that's it. Behind the scenes, the flow goes back and then takes my response. The response that I pass back, the approve or the reject, which I could change the wording on that, by the way, those responses become then a variable within the flow, and then I can use that to make decisions, to branch or loop. Okay? So all those good things that we can do. And again, all of that we can do right in the browser. Okay, so kind of price point, can I get started for free? The answer is yes. So if you've never tried Flow before and you just want to try it, even if you don't have an Office 365 environment at the minute, you can actually go and you can try Flow for free. There's quite a few limitations with that though. So for example, as a free user of Flow, someone just trying it effectively, not connected to Office 365, you can run 750 flows per month. So as an individual, you could run 750 flows. So actually, if you're just testing it, that's plenty. Yeah. But if we were a real business, and actually I'm the only one that signed up for it, 750 flows is not that many. Yeah, over a month. Yeah. So where do we go when we start to pay for things? What benefits do we get? Well, actually, before we have to pay for things, if we're an Office 365 user, most of the Office 365 plans include 2,000 flows per user per month. And that is cumulative. So it's not a case of I'm Rob and I've got a license for Office 365 so I can submit 2,000 expense claims. If I don't actually submit any expense claims, that 2,000 rolls up to the tenant level. Yeah, it's cumulative. So if I've not ran any flows, then anyone else in the business can use my 2,000 flows. Yeah, so a quick example of that. So if I've got, what we're going to see is plan 1 at the minute, so we get 4,500 flows per person if we pay a bit extra. So we then get that many flows per month across the tenancy. If you were hitting that, you can then purchase more. Okay, so it is a model where if it becomes very popular, it can scale up. So from a technical point of view, you can run effectively infinite amount, but at some point we'll have to start paying. Yeah. So the choices here, we've got plan 1, plan 2. So if you become a massive user of this as a company, you may find you need to go plan 2 to get your 15,000 flows per month. But you would have to be pretty invested in this stuff to have that many. Yeah, bearing in mind it's cumulative. So if I've got 100 users that are plan 2, I'm going to get a massive amount of flows that I can run. What are the other benefits then of kind of upgrading, if you know what I mean, paying the extra $5 or $15 a month as it stands at the moment? But those, I grabbed those prices yesterday. So as of yesterday, that was kind of how the prices stand. Obviously, over time, prices could well change again, but that's how these prices stand at the moment. One of the things that we get, as well as being able to run a lot more of these flows with these kind of premium plans, is we can also get what's described as premium connectivity. We said back here you've got 45 services you can connect to. If you're in the flow free, you're not going to get the full 45 services. Yep, so you're not going to be able to connect to everything that someone at this other kind of premium end of the scale is able to connect to. At the moment, I've still not seen a definitive list yet of exactly what is a premium connection versus a standard. So I'm not sure that Microsoft have released that yet. So there's definitely the idea that depending on what services you want to connect to, you may have to pay more, but I'm not sure that that definitive list has definitely been given out yet. I know there was a conference session that Microsoft did not very long ago, just like a few weeks ago, and in there they said we've not defined it yet, we've not published it yet. So hopefully sometime soon, if we're going to start paying for this, they'll be able to confirm for us what the premium list is. Also, as we get further down into this premium, we're going to get more management. Okay, so what management might mean is when we identify different services that we're connecting to, we'll be able to say that we do not want any data from service A to ever be passed to service B. So if service A is our Office 365 document libraries and service B is Twitter, we can say workflows can work with, or flows can work with both our Office 365 documents and Twitter, but we can distinguish and say nothing from A should ever get sent to B. Yep. So at the moment, if I'm on a free or kind of this down this end, I'm not going to get that sort of management. Whereas as I go to the premium plans, I'm going to get more management. So as an administrator, I'll be able to control the flow of data a bit more. Okay. Don't get me wrong, as an individual user, I can see how many of my workflows have ran. I can pause or disable my workflows. So as an individual user, I get a bit of basic workflow management anyway. If there's an error, for example, I can review the errors and get an idea of what caused it. But if we're looking at it as an organization, then we might want more control of that. Yeah, so that's something that I've seen screenshots of, but Microsoft haven't released all of it yet into the actual product. Okay. So in short, not super expensive. You can get started for free, and even when you get fully on board with it, it's still not a lot of money. Okay, some of the things we mentioned, let's just do a quick time check. We're not doing too bad. So some of the things we mentioned, you can build flows that can do a whole variety of things. So they can loop and reoccur. We can talk to things like the SharePoint profile database or Azure Active Directory to get things like people's managers' names or email addresses. We can use delays to pause the process. We can talk to products like CRM. We can have flows that are aware of forms that we've created in PowerApps. We can delete and update items as well as creating new items in a variety of systems, and we can get approval. Okay, so I'm going to skip, and then what I want to do just very briefly is PowerApps, and then I'm going to go straight onto the demos for the rest of the session. Okay, so PowerApps, so we said kind of the closest comparison to this at the moment would have been InfoPath. Yeah, we've already said InfoPath is kind of here to stay for the foreseeable future. So PowerApps needs to do a few things better than InfoPath for it to make any sense. Yeah. So first thing straight away is PowerApps can be browser-based. Okay, so you can create and submit your apps without using InfoPath. So I don't need to download a tool. I don't have to download a tool to build forms using PowerApps. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So we'll see that in a moment. Having said that, you can also download an app. So I've got an app that I've put on my phone. I could use that. Also, I've got an app on my Windows 10 PC. I could use that to help me build forms as well. So I can use browser or apps, and I get a really, really good experience in both. I'm going to demo the browser because that's probably the most impressive. Okay, we can bring in data from a whole variety of systems. So not just SharePoint, but other systems as well. We can do things like conditional formatting, so we can change the color of parts of the form based on the data. So that's comparable with InfoPath. One of the really cool things we can do is as soon as I create a form, particularly in Office 365 using PowerApps, and I save that form, it's instantly available in the mobile app. You don't need to say, oh, I've built a form, now make it available for my users that have mobile apps. It's just a default. So you build a form for data entry into a task list, for example, and instantly it's available in the mobile app. People can download the mobile app for free, they can fill in the form, they get a great experience. When they fill in that form, they log in using, in my example, their Office 365 username and password, they submit the data, and almost instantly, so we've seen it within a second, having submitted that data, it then appears in your list within Office 365. Assuming that's where you've connected everything up to. So really quick, really simple ways of submitting data. Something that Microsoft is still working on at the moment as well with these Power Apps is they're going to make them available more integrated within our SharePoint lists. So at the moment, if I'm in a list and I've built one of these Power Apps, when I'm in a list and I go to switch view, So I've got like my all items view here. I've got a Power App called Travel Claim. At the moment, when I click on that, it'll open up in a new tab in the browser, and people can then fill in that form. What we've heard is loads of requests coming in already that people want to be able to make that more integrated. So maybe when you hit the new button within the list, it uses that form, or maybe when you go to a page, the form's embedded within the page, a bit like we can do at the moment with these info path web parts, these embedded web parts. So at the moment, it's a separate tab, but there's definitely talk that that's something that's going to be improved on, hopefully pretty soon. So this mobile and this integration is a big part of what we're going to get. Prices, so again, we can get started for free. So I can build a whole load of these Power Apps just as part of having my Office 365 license. Both Power Apps and Forms, by the way, have their own website. So I don't even have to have Office 365 to begin with. I can go straight to their own website directly and kind of get to them that way. I'm going to be in my Office 365 tenancy, and from there I'm going to be using them, but you can get to them through their own individual websites as well. Okay, and then the sort of scale goes up as I want to be able to do more and more things. Again, this is listed as per user per month. So if I was someone that wanted to build more advanced forms, and again we can see some of those things that will be available, then as an individual I might pay this extra money. So I don't necessarily have to upgrade all of my users, because not all of them are going to need to build those forms, but maybe for the guys that are going to build the forms, then we might have to pay a bit of extra money. And again, the prices are not astronomical, you know, they're kind of pretty reasonable at the moment. Right, so the good news is, all that's left to do is demo the heck out of all that stuff. So the first thing I'm going to go for is Power Apps, and I'm going to do a Microsoft one first of all, just to show you, you know, if someone had spent, let's say, more than an hour building one of these forms, what it might look like. So what's like a finished one, what does that look like, and what might it do? Then I'll go in and I'm going to build one from scratch, which is going to take about 10 minutes, and show you what a form that takes 10 minutes to build might look like. And then I should hopefully have just enough time with that one to also show you that working through a mobile device as well. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm logged into Office 365, and I'm just going to go into my app launcher, and I'm just going to head up here into Power Apps. And you can see Flow is also in there as well, or it should be. Oh yeah, there it is, right next door. So Power Apps and Flow, they're both hooked into there, because I've already signed up for the trial for mine. So I'm going to go into Power Apps. And again, at the moment, I've not downloaded any software to help me do this. It's completely browser-based. So within here, it offers me loads of different ones. So I've been playing around with this for the last few weeks or so. I deleted the loads this morning, but I've actually got a whole load back in. So these are a load that I've built already. It's offering me loads of different ways of creating apps. So do I want to create it based on a data source? Do I want to create one from scratch, effectively start with a blank template and build it all myself? That's more what I'm going to do for the next example. Or if you just want to quickly see one and get an idea of how it might look if you spend, you know, an hour or two building one out, you can try one of these. So I'm going to go for just one of these just as a quick example. How might one of these look? So when I go in to select this, it asks, right, how do you intend to use this particular Power App? Is it going to be on a phone, or is it going to be on a tablet? At the moment, you have to choose. In the future, Microsoft are going to update this so that it can be dynamic. So the plan is you'll be able to build one form, and it will be appropriate automatically for both a phone and a tablet. I guess the tablet's like, I don't know, 2 times taller and like 6 times wider than a phone, so it has to be quite dynamic to be able to deal with that. So for now, I'm going to go tablet. Yeah. So we're going to try and do a whole variety. We're going to do a tablet, we're going to do a phone, and we're going to do a browser, like a desktop as well. So if I go tablet, and it actually comes up and it actually says, it tests it as though it were on a tablet, and it's asking, can it use my camera? There's not a camera on this particular device at the moment, but it asks me anyway. It warns me that because I'm previewing this on a desktop, it doesn't have the full functionality that I would get if I was actually on a tablet PC. That's fine for now. I'm okay with that. It's going to be good enough for the demo anyway. So there we go. So this is what you know, a really well-made app might look like, assuming I'd spent, you know, let's say at least an hour on the thing, you know, really kind of working on it. So some of the things we've got going on in here, if I have a look, so this is a budget tracker. One of the cool things they've got in here is they've got a chart and they've got some totals. So if I have a look in here, if I select, in this case, like an existing budget, annoyingly, it's not, oh, there we go, it's going, it was just a bit slow. I thought it was going to crash on me then, it nearly did, I think. So I want to select a budget, there we go, and then underneath it then brings up the items that have been assigned to that budget. So a budget might represent a project or a conference. So we select it, then we can add an item to that. So let's put some more food onto the bill. So it's going to be food, let's say it's lunch, and it was a good lunch, let's say it was $300. So we can see, imagine if you were on a mobile device, this is full screen, you're on your iPad, for example, it's full screen, we can go ahead and we can save it, it refreshes, it updates everything. If I want to add a new project, I can go add. You can see these pages here. I'll show you in the next example how you would build all these pages out and how you would connect them all together. So you can see there's a series of pages with arrows and navigation to move back and forth. So here, let's say there's a new project. And again, imagine someone's out on site, they're visiting a customer, they've got an internet connection, they can be filling this in real time, and as soon as they hit save, it's going back into the cloud, and it's becoming visible immediately back in your SharePoint lists or wherever your data is. Okay, so I can go to Project A, the chart's empty, I can go to add a new item. Let's say there's some more lunch. It remembered that data from the first time I filled it in, which is fine for now. So we can see actually you get a pretty good experience. So I'm going to drop back out of that one for a moment. And what I want to do this time is something a bit more involved. I kind of want to see how would it look if I was actually building something myself, and what are some of the first things that I need to know to be able to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do as I go to build my own version of that form, it's not going to be quite as flashy because we don't really have enough time in 1 hour, but we'll do the best we can. So we're going to go settings, we're going to go site content, and what I'm going to do is just go to the new menu here, and I'm going to choose to make a new list. So this is going to be where the data is going to be held that's going to be passed into the form. So the end goal of this is I'll be able to fill this in on my iPhone, which I'm going to share on the screen with you. You'll be able to see me type on the iPhone in a moment. And as I type data into the iPhone mobile app, not directly connected to my PC, but via the internet, that data is going to be submitted straight into this list. And it's not going to be a technical thing to do. It's going to be relatively easy to do. So let's try and prove that. Can we do that in 3 minutes? Hopefully we can. So I'm going to go new list. The reason I'm going for a list is the other options in there are all not quite so integrated. So if I went for a document library or an app, they're not quite so integrated yet with apps, but the new lists are. So this is best for the example at the moment. The other ones are not quite so integrated. In the future, hopefully they will be. So I'm going to call this Rob's task list. I'm afraid this is not a very imaginative one, but it's great for what we want to do for this demo. So this is going to be a little task list. It's kind of like you know, my first one, sort of getting started. So let's do a basic one. In here, I want to rename the title. So at the moment, this is just all normal SharePoint online. So I'm going to rename the title. So I want to call it task name. In here, I want to add, let's say I want 2 more columns. Let's just do this fairly quick. So I'm going to have a due date for each task. And then I'm also going to have a price. Let's say I want to put in currency. So I'm going to say, oops, I clicked the wrong one, so that's my mistake. So I want to go more, and it wants to be a currency. Let's say the tasks have a cost that are associated, and we want to be able to, you know, total them up. Okay, when I pressed OK, it's gone blank. Let's just go back and try and see if that worked. Well, that was weird. Pretty sure I pressed OK and it went blank. Alright, if that didn't work, I'm just going to try once more. So that is not anything that should have been really new. This is just normal SharePoint stuff. Let me just try and put this cost field in once more. For some reason, when I pressed OK, it just went blank. Let's try OK that again. There we go, worked that time. Right, so now I'm ready to build my custom Power App, which is going to let me fill in data on my phone or in the browser, and it's going to populate this list immediately. So how do I do it? Well, I could log into the PowerApps site. So from PowerApps up here, I could go in and kind of get started that way, but I don't have to. So here I can go PowerApps, and I can choose to create an app. In here, I'm going to call this Rob's tasks demo, let's call it that for now, Rob's Task Demo. So that's going to become the name of the app. That's what I'll see on my phone in just a couple of minutes' time. So behind the scenes, it's evaluating the list. It's looking at the data, and based on that, it's building a form. And it's also going to do a kind of initial save of the form as well. And at this point, I've realised I've done something that I really shouldn't have done. What I've done is I have created the form when there was no data in my list. What that means is it's hard to see kind of how successful that was or how bad that was. So I'm actually upset enough with that I'm going to go all the way back. What I'm going to do is just spend one moment back over here and open a new tab with all that in. I'm just going to add 2 items into here, and this is something that I learned a lot more about this week. If I create all this stuff and I don't have any data in it, it's quite hard to tell if I'm making good progress or if it's a mess. So I'm going to go back one step here. So I'm just going to add 2 items in. So Rob's task list, let's say it's my kind of to-do list for tonight. So I need to buy some food. Let's say that's today. Let's say that's hopefully not going to cost too much. So that's a task that I've put in. I'll put one more in as well because I need to have at least 2 tasks in here. For this to look kind of nice in the form building. Let's say the food's for tomorrow. There's 0 cost with that one. Okay, so now if I go one more time and create the app, we're going to see, because I've used that name, I can't use the same name. Let's call it Rob's Demo 9. I bet I've not got one called Rob's Demo 9. Luckily this is a test site, so I can make a bit of a mess here and no one's going to get too upset with me. So it was worth doing that because what we're going to see now is that it's going to build it and it's working straight away. With it being empty to begin with, having no data in there, it was pretty hard to know whether it was a good success or whether it was terrible. So it takes just a few seconds. That's what's that, 20, 30 seconds, quick as that, and there we go. So what I'm going to do before I kind of do anything else is I just want to press this play button at the corner here, top right. So if I press play, I can actually see what it's built for me already. So all those fields have come in. So imagine I'm on my iPhone here. Yeah, I can look at this on my iPhone. I could go in and edit it on my iPhone. Depending on the device I'm on, I might get a good or a not so good experience with this whole date picker thing. That doesn't seem to be working everywhere at the minute, but hopefully that's something that they're going to improve as well. So you can see effectively there's this first page, and when I click on an item, I go to this page, and then there's an edit version of that page, and then there's these icons to move between it all. And inherently there's loads of functionality there already. So let's just see if I go to add a new item. That was good. So because it's a number, it wouldn't let me type text into there. So it's got some business logic. So I wanted a number, a due date, and let's call it test task, just to get something in there, just because I'm wary of the time. I don't want to spend too long. And if I go and have a look back over here, let's go and have a look. I'm just going to refresh this, get back to the normal view. You can see actually that preview is really doing what it said. So we need to be a bit careful because that preview actually has saved data. It's actually put it back into the list, which is really unusual. It is good for testing though. Sometimes you use when I use other systems for building forms, whether it's a Crystal Report Writer or whatever else is out there, the preview doesn't necessarily allow you to do everything, whereas in here it really is sending data back to the list. So that for me, the way I work, is good. Some people might not like that, but I think it's pretty good. Okay, so what I also want to do is just customize this a bit more. So a couple of really quick things I could do. I could choose to show a bit more data. So if I kind of click around over here, there's all these different layouts available. So I don't have much data to play with, but I've got a few bits, so I can kind of do that a little bit. At the moment in here it's showing, what have we got? Yeah, we've not got too much stuff. We've got actually the same information coming through on 2 of them. So if I kind of look here, so that one's showing the title, and then that one's showing the title, and that one just has some kind of blank text in it at the moment. So if I have a look, so actually I want at least one of them to show the cost. and then we don't have much else available. Cost created, I guess the due date is going to sit up there for now. So the form was okay. It was better to preview because I had data in it, but it still was a bit random. Why would it put the same stuff in twice? So I was able just to tweak it. I could rearrange all this stuff. I could grab it. One thing I can do definitely in here is I can grab the top one. The top one represents kind of an example for the other ones, and whatever I do to that top one, it will apply to the others. A good example of that is if I want to put conditional formatting on so that these dates turn red if they're in the past. So if the due date for something is red in the past, I could do that just on the top one, and it will apply the same things to all these other ones as well. So, let's try that. That's kind of cool. So if I select this, over at the top here, I could say that I want to control the fill color, which is the background color of it. And it has a fill color at the minute, which translates to white, but I can improve on that. So I can use an if statement. I can actually write a formula into here. So I could say if and I can pick out the due date, which because I put a space in it has this awful %20. I can say if the due date is in the future, so I could calculate that because there is a today function. The only way I kind of know there's a today function is as I start to type, it tells me. Yeah, so I don't have a memory, I've not committed all these things to memory, I can just start to type, and if it wasn't today, I'd kind of go, is there a now function? You know, I could kind of dig around in there, and Microsoft have published some lists of these commands, but hopefully those lists are going to get better. I know from experience, because it's a function, today is going to need an open close bracket on the end of the thing. So I'm saying if this date is in the future, then I want it to be green, and green is just a command that's available, so it knows that green is the color green, and then otherwise I want it to be red. And again, as I type, it's kind of reassuring me. It's not offering me everything ahead of time, but it's kind of reassuring me as I start to type. And as I click away, we can see it applying. I don't even need to preview. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, so I know we don't have much time left, but it's okay. If it's okay with you guys, I'm going to keep going for about another 10 minutes to finish this demo, and also to do a flow demo for you as well. If you can stick around for about another 10 minutes, then I think it'll be worth your while. Okay, so we've started to customize things a bit more. So let me just go off my checklist. So with conditional formatted, so that's looking pretty good. I'm going to add an additional screen. See over here, the 3 screens that I kind of identified, and we said there's icons to move between them. That's something that's kind of, at first, is a bit weird. So effectively, when you're on an iPhone in this case, you only get to see one page of information at a time, and that's described as a screen. So what I can do is I can go in and I can make a new screen, which was the new screen button here. I can click where it says screen 1, and I can rename it. So let's say I want to have a contacts page, and on there it's going to tell people some contact details if they're having trouble. So I'm going to make this as a contacts page. So it's a new screen, and then I've clicked here to rename it. So at the moment, if someone's in this screen, they can't get to the contact screen. There's no way of doing it. It's really easy to connect them together when you work out how. You go to the screen that's going to be the starting point, and you add on some of these icons. So how do we do that? We go Insert, and we go Icon, and there's a whole load of them already. So I'm not going to be too imaginative. Let's just say, what's a good one? Let's say this 3D printing one is the contact details one. There's all sorts of different ones. Let's say this one for now. So someone's going to click on this to get contact details for like help or support, and let's say we've told them that's always the help icon. How do we then connect that to move over to there? Well, we select it, we go Action, and we have Navigate. And Navigate is just basically for connecting, moving between these different pages that we have. Okay? So I've selected that, I'm going to go Navigate, and then it asks me 2 things. Where do you want to go to? So I'm going to say go to Contacts. And then what transition do you want? So I'm going to do a uncover. So there's different like swiping up and down and fading across. That doesn't make much difference. It's just a visual. In the meantime, what I'm going to also do is put a quick icon. I'm not going to take too long on this. Let's just put this one in for now. A quick icon up here. That's going to be used to go back. So people can get back from here to the, what was this one called? It was the browse screen 1. Okay, so we'd repeat that process. So we'd go Insert, we'd go Action, Navigate, and we'd say go back to browse screen 1 and do the transition whichever one it might be. I'm not going to actually spend too much time building this now because we're overrun already, and that's what the beeper's telling me. But just to give you a quick idea, if I wanted to include text on here, I could go insert text, and I could actually just type in here. Yep. So I could do that for static text. If I've got some images that I want to put into here, what I could do is go into this media section, and I could bring in some images. So I'm going to do this very quickly because it's just going to make the whole thing pop a little bit more. So I have an image. It actually happens to be an animated one as well, which is going to make it even more interesting. And this animation, it's just a GIF in this case. But these apps can include video and audio as well as text and pictures. So I'm just going to throw that into there. And because I'm running out of time, it's going to go slow on purpose just to spite me. I have done this demo a few times this week, and it is always quick normally. The other thing that's scaring me now is that this is taking so long that I'm starting to think it's not going to happen, and I've not pressed save for a while. If it comes up with a window that I have seen a few times this week, which is a window that says error, there is a problem, a new tab will now open, there is a risk that I will have lost everything I've done so far. So obviously that would make me not very happy. I think some of that at the moment is just because it's such an early product, but I've definitely been able to create a few errors. Okay, right. It says it's not responding. I'm going to wait a few more seconds because if it does crash, then I'm going to lose everything we've not saved so far. So a good lesson there is we should be saving more often. And obviously if we'd saved, it would still be okay. But if this crashes properly, which it looks like it has, that means I've lost that app. So really annoyingly, what I was about to do was publish that app, and it was about to appear on my phone, and it would have happened instantly. So as soon as I published the app, it would have done it. Right. I wonder if I can navigate back. No, it's not going to let me, is it? So basically, this is the downside of doing any editing in a browser. If the thing crashes for some reason, which it does do every now and again at the moment, then I'm kind of in trouble. So apologies for that. That's quite annoying. What I could do, let me just check something on my phone. Let me see if I've got any other apps still saved, because if I've got a different one, I'll just open one of those up. Bear with me a second. I'm just going to have a quick look, see if I've still got one. If I have one, I'll share it because it's worth a quick look. Can't believe that's crashed. That's the worst time it could crash. That's right at the very, very, very end of everything. Okay, we might get away with this and just having a quick look now. Just having a quick look on some of my other apps that I've got at the minute. Right, let me just have a quick look. What I'll do is I'll show you a Microsoft one, because at the moment that's just going to be the best thing I think for now. So here I am on my phone then, and I'm going to go and launch the PowerApps app on my phone. And if I go back to the kind of home page, any apps that I have appear here on the list. From the file menu that I just crashed in, and it looks like it still crashed, that file menu that I was in a moment ago, in there I could choose these icons that appear on the left, I could choose the color of them, I could choose the name that appears across the top, and you can see I've got a whole load in here. So my one is not in there, and there's other similar ones that look similar, but it's not, my one's not there because of the crash. If I go into a Microsoft one for now, just to show you one, so if I go into the cost estimator, just an example one there. So this is based on the same sort of thing that I've just been doing. They've got a few different pages. So in here there's the first page, and then if I click, it opens up. In this particular one, they've got a button to begin an estimate process. So they've created a page with a few more fields on. This one they've also put some calculations into as well, which I didn't put any calculations into mine, but it's just an extension of what we were doing. It's not too far away. So if I just fill in one of their forms, they've put some nice pictures into it, which is cool, and then they just calculate an estimate. They've also included a little signature panel, so on my phone I could do a little sign off. and again, the really cool thing that I wanted to show you, which the crash has stopped me doing, is that this one creates an email, but my one would have submitted it straight back to SharePoint. So it would have submitted it straight back. Okay, so let's get rid of that for a moment. So you'll have to take my word for it at the moment that if that wouldn't have crashed, it would have all worked straight away. Right, I'm going to have to close that one. And then the only other thing I wanted to really show you, yeah, it's had a proper crash, look, the whole thing's completely gone. The only other thing I really wanted to show you then was a flow. So the good news is flows are even quicker to build, even quicker. So let's say for some reason these tasks require approval. Yeah, really simple scenario. Everyone in the team can add tasks like ideas. This is things we think we should be doing. Yeah, and what we could do is we can go in and we could go and create a flow so that perhaps the manager decides whether these things are allowed to be done or not. And what we're going to do is it'll take just 2 minutes to do. I'm going to create a new flow that's going to run every time there's a new task. It's going to email a manager and they'll get to approve or reject directly from the email. Okay. So I'm going to go and create a flow. Hopefully this doesn't crash, otherwise I might cry. Fingers crossed for us all. So on the right hand side, look how nice this is. It offers me, either I could create a flow from a blank page or I could use a template, and there's loads of templates. So again, don't think of Flow as being a SharePoint product. SharePoint is only part of where it can be used. It can be used completely independently of SharePoint potentially. Yeah. In here, I'm going to, as a SharePoint person, I'm going to stick in SharePoint. So I'm going to go send approval email when a new item is added. Yeah. So this is going to bring up an interface completely in the browser. On my phone, I have an app, and I could build these workflows on my phone as well. Not only to build them, but to view them and check that they're working properly. I can also trigger these flows from my phone as well. Yep. Just using an app, no development, all that cool stuff I can do just out of the box. As promised, this is just going to take a couple of minutes to do super quick. So in here, when a new item is created, what I need to do is copy the site where the item is. Because the flows are going to run on a separate server, they don't run where SharePoint lives. They're running kind of out of context. So I need to tell it in here the URL of the site. I need to tell it the name of the list. Let's just double check it was Rob's task list, yeah, because I've got a couple of similar ones, so it's Rob's task list is the one. So when I add a new item into there, then what I want to do is email, and I have a particular person that I want to email, but it could have been a variable that I passed in. Okay, I don't know if you saw there, but I had to click on my name twice. There's kind of a bug at the minute where the first time you click on the name, it leaves your name and the email address, and it will be an error. So I have to click twice on my name, and then it's selected. So that's going to resolve to an email address. What I'm going to do is say if it's approved, everything's fine. However, if it's rejected, I want to delete that item. And look how nice this is. There's a little branch here. I can go to add an action. Let's say I can't remember the name of the command. If I start to type in SharePoint, because I think it's SharePoint something, and I think it's to do with deleting something, as I start to type that gibberish, and it could have been in any order, it's got loads of keywords associated with each action. Okay, so in here, it's called delete item. And what I'm going to say is, again, paste in that URL of that site where I am, and again, select the list name, which is in the drop-down here. Oh, the drop-down's playing fun and games with me. The good news is I can just type it in. There we go. And then it wants to know, well, what should I delete? What is it I should delete? The good news is, earlier on in the workflow, when the item was created, the flow craftily and very cleverly picked up on the ID of what was created. So that same ID, I can now use what might be 3 or 4 days later to delete the item. So that is really a good experience. The only thing that maybe is not perfect was the fact that I had to put in a site URL. It didn't know where I started. But that's okay, because that's also a good thing, because these workflows can work across different sites. Yeah? So it doesn't say, oh, you're in site A, you have to build a flow that works and relates to site A. It could be that you're in site A, but building a flow that relates to site B or C or Twitter or Facebook or something else completely bizarre. So it made no assumptions, and it just said, right, you start from where you want to start. So I had to paste a URL in, but that's as hard as it's been today, I think. Yeah. I could build that out, I could add more actions. So again, I could type Twitter or Dropbox or Facebook or whatever, and there's a whole massive amount of commands. For now, I'm happy with that. I want to see it working. So we're going to go up, we're going to choose to create the flow. And again, we did all that in the browser. Didn't have to download anything. And then I know we've overrun by 10 minutes. Part of that was the crashing. That was a good 2 minutes of crashing, I think. So if I have done that and it says everything's good, yeah, it's healthy, I can test it. And again, I wish, wouldn't it have been cool if I could go onto my iPhone and fill in my form? I can't because it crashed. So imagine, if you can imagine for my benefit, that I'm on my iPhone, I'm going into my form, I'm filling this in on my iPhone. So on here, so let's have a task of doing some crashing, and let's say we'll crash by Sunday, and that's going to cost us at least £100. Okay, so I fill that in. So that goes in, and kind of if I'd done that on my phone and then refresh this right here now, it would be there. Yeah, I wouldn't be nervous. I would press refresh, it would be there. Like, you know, a second or two later, the things arrived. Okay, so that's pretty cool as part of that demo that we didn't see, but I can tell you. And then the other thing that should happen, just to finish that off, just before we do a quick sign off and a summary for you guys, over in my email then, I should have received a email to tell me that we have an approval process. So the workflow will be starting. Let's just refresh this. And again, that email should come through. There we go, pretty quick. So that was, what, 30 seconds or so. So the workflow started. Do I approve the crash plan? No, I don't think it's a very good plan. And that task that's been submitted by one of my co-workers, I'm going to reject it. And again, I've not typed anything. I've not had to download anything. I've just pressed reject. It tells me I've rejected, so I'm very sure that I've done it. I don't have to look over here, but I'm going to anyway. If I refresh over here, we can see that the workflow has, the flow has deleted that. So it is very much, from the demos I've done, able to work with users. It's able to work in lists, particularly the new Office 365 lists. But we could have done a whole load of demos today that wouldn't even have really mentioned SharePoint. We could have had flows that were running in the cloud using the same tools. We would have logged into the Flow website. Yeah, so we could have gone flow.microsoft.com, and within there we could have built flows that did said that when someone mentions me on Twitter, put it into my OneDrive or put it into my Facebook, or the connections don't have to go through or start at SharePoint. Again, we've focused on SharePoint because most of our customers are SharePoint and Office 365 people. And that's kind of where we were getting questions to begin with. Okay, so as you could probably tell, that's not gone quite as well as I would have liked it to, but hopefully that's given you a pretty good idea of how quickly you can get started. Microsoft have been very clear that these two products are not finished. So they're only just becoming into public release effectively. They've been going through their preview, which is like a beta. As recently as this week, only one of them has just come into general release, so it's officially available now. So Microsoft are telling us it's early days. So considering this is like version 1.0 of these products, they're very, very good. A few things that Microsoft tell us are going to get better. The forms are going to be more dynamic, so you can build a form, hopefully, that could work across an iPhone and a tablet rather than having to design them specifically. We're going to have more administration, so for those people that are paying for the premium versions of these products, there'll be more control over where data can be sent to and from, who can manage things, who can't. There's also going to be a gallery for the organization and the public level that's coming in the future, where we can, for the organization gallery, I could build a form, a Power App, and make it available to other people across the organization very easily, rather than sending them specific files or URLs. We could do it this gallery, and a public gallery where potentially we could actually share things outside of our organization. So I could build a form using this Power App and share that with other organizations. The last one there is just to say the same sort of story for Flow. So improvements to the admin center, more focus on co-authoring. I don't know if you noticed, but when I was building the flow, the two flows that I built there, it was all centered around me. It was my flows. I was logged in as me rather than the flows that were for the business and the department. So some of that's going to change a bit in the future to make things work a bit more for co-authoring, where teams of people are working on these things. We also have some options already now for building flows on mobile device, and also the idea, this was just an idea that was mentioned, but I hope it happens in the future, and this was mentioned at one of the Microsoft conferences, the idea that flows could be triggered based on mobile data. So perhaps a flow could be triggered because I'm in Leicestershire. So as my phone travels into the Leicestershire area, that could trigger a flow. So that doesn't happen at the minute, but these are some of the things that Microsoft have been talking about as kind of future things. And again, a lot of these things we just don't get to do through the existing products. So summary, we're still going to use everything. So we have more choices than ever before. Hopefully that means for our very demanding end users, we have more things to please them. It definitely means we've got a bit of learning to do, but and that everyone's in the same boat. There's kind of no one yet that's a full expert in this because they're still building it. And then also, although we've not focused on it today, remember developers can extend all this stuff. There was that diagram we showed you earlier to say there's a whole variety of products and techniques that developers could use to extend and enhance both of the products. Yeah, so there's a whole developer side to it as well. So thanks for joining me. Apologies for the crash and the 15-minute overrun of time. Just to mention, if you want to get in touch with me, the best way to get me is my email, so you can get me on rob@combined-knowledge.com. Yeah, so if you've got any thoughts or questions or comments, you can get me on that. If you want to talk to someone on the phone, Zoe's probably the best person to talk to if you've not already got a contact here at Combined Knowledge. So she's more office-based than I am, so you can get Zoe in particular on 01415 200 520. You might get me on that number sometimes, but I'm not here that often. If anyone really wants to know a lot more about these products, we are at the moment writing a 2-day class. So that 2-day class is going to be available towards the start of next year. Yep, so these products are still being developed, so that class is still being developed. But yeah, for me, I'm pretty excited about these products. I'm looking forward to seeing what Microsoft are going to do with them, in the next 6 months or so, because they seem to be very, very busy working on them. Okay, so there's a couple of questions. One question was the presentation recorded? So yes, it has been recorded, and I think it's going to be made available on our YouTube channel. Yep, so it has been recorded. It won't be there straight away because someone has to go and manually upload the thing. But yeah, if you did miss a bit of the session, then you can catch that on our YouTube channel. Yep, we can do that. And I think that's more or less it for the questions. I'm just having a quick look through here. Can it connect with Microsoft Dynamics? Yes, I believe it can. I must confess I've not done a lot with that myself using Flow, but I believe it can. I believe there's a series of commands that could be used with that as well. So yeah, it could. Yeah, definitely there's commands in there for working with Microsoft CRM stuff. So you can, yeah, it can create new items. It can update existing items. It can delete items. There is a it's one of the 45 services is the Dynamics stack. Yeah, and there's a whole variety of commands. Excellent. So yeah, I think everyone is right to be excited, as am I. So yeah, I'll just say thanks for joining us today, and I'll leave my email address on the screen. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can email me. I am in the office tomorrow actually, so if you've got any kind of pressing questions, then you can get me on the email. Excellent. So hopefully see you again sometime on one of the other sessions. Keep an eye out for more free webinars, and particularly if you're interested in PowerApps and Flow, we have our 2-day course that's coming next year. Thank you.